They always have the same look on their face, like this. How she does it. I mean, that's the look I'd have on my face. Incident. Okay, so we're on chapter 3. We're on page. We are on page 20. Things, page numbers I wrote. 26. I wrote right over it. So I already mentioned just a minute ago that the S stands for second law of thermodynamics. But how does the second law, first of all, let's talk about what does the second law of thermodynamics say? And it says several things. What's one thing that the second law of thermodynamics says? Yes? The universe is running out of usable energy. And someday it will run out of energy. And how does that show us that there's a beginning of the universe? Yes? Yeah, there's no infinite supply of energy because it's running out. If it were infinite, it would stay the same. It would stay infinitely the same. Also, holy God, I have a voice keeps cracking. What else does the second law of thermodynamics say? Yes.
It's like the law of entropy. And without the time, all things
Yeah. Yeah. So the law of entropy is part of the second law of thermodynamics, and that's with time, things go bad, right? They slow down. Trust me, I'm 61. I can attest to that 100%. But I've never forgotten this time when my son Josh, who was probably about 5-6 years old, we were driving our beater van down Fort Crook Road, and we were about here when we passed a Cadillac, but it was an old, broken down Cadillac, and it, like the roof part was coming off, and it was all rusted, several colors. And I turned to Josh and I said, Josh, when that car was new, it was one of the nicest cars on the road. And he laughed. He's like, no, it wasn't. It couldn't have been. That car is just awful. Yeah, but it wasn't always that way. Everything we own, right, it tends to decay, for lack of a better term, as do our bodies, as does every living thing. If you've ever, had a flower garden or something, you don't take care of it, it dies. So that's the law of entropy. But then the other thing is that the second law of thermodynamics says is that the amount of energy in the universe is finite. Well, if the universe was infinite, if it has always been, the amount of energy in the universe would be infinite. But it makes sense that if we're running out of usable energy, that the amount of energy in the universe is finite. It can't be infinite if we're running out of it. So that is all of that is tied up in this, and then the other thing that the second law of thermodynamics tells us is that the universe is expanding from a single point. Like when they take the expansion and they almost like if you took a video of a firework, right, and they light it and then it disperses. But if you run that backwards, it's going to all kind of collapse back down, right? And so they can kind of do that. They can kind of run that video backwards and see how it's all expanding from a single point that is so small that it's functionally nothing. It's really, really interesting. Question 7. What is or no, it's not question 7. Number 2 in this. What is the U stand for? Yeah. So I'm sorry, I just said that and I didn't see that it had the U in front of it. Yeah, the universe is expanding from a single point. And as I just said, that shows that that's the beginning of the universe because, again, we can, kind of not recreate really, but theoretically. And it all goes back to this point, this single point that is functionally nothing that we can see or discern. And what is the R for? Yes. Radiation from the Big Bang. How does that show that the universe had a beginning? Yes.
Or like for this, you have to have radiation. Found radiation. That was just
Yeah. Yeah, if the universe had a beginning, we would expect, the scientists would, I wouldn't, because I don't understand these things, but just what I read here, but we would expect this radiation from that Big Bang. And it was discovered um, that the light and the heat from the Big Bang was discovered just as the math had said it would if the universe had a beginning. Now, if the universe is eternal, then there's no need for that. But they did find it. What does the G stand for?
Great galaxy.
Great galaxy seeds. It sounds like somebody, like, I don't know, say, great balls of fire. Sometimes they have an exclamation. Great galaxy seeds. The new exclamation. Yeah. So that how do the great galaxy seeds show that there's a beginning to the universe? And basically, what are they?
Like the ripples, probably like background, attractions, whenever they see that, it's like hot, right?
So
So it tells like whether the ripples are actually existing or it's just like radiation or like how it
yeah, so it's the ripples in the cosmic background radiation that was predicted by the math and the science, but it was actually found by COBE, by the satellite COBE found it. So it was predicted that it would be there, but they didn't find it. But now we have. It's like you see a wave coming, right? And it builds and it builds and those ripples in space. If there was an explosion at a single point that was zero or nothing, then we should see these ripples. We saw them. And then what is E? Einstein's theory of general relativity. And that is the mathematical case for the beginning of the universe. And in fact, uh, Einstein's theory demands that the universe has a beginning. He didn't like that conclusion, but it was he had to believe that there was that the universe was not eternal, but had a beginning. So it caused consternation for a number of atheistic scientists, but it's true. Any questions on this? Okay, so where you're going to go from here is that I gave you that study guide, and I'm going to give you the rest of today to work on that study guide. And we'll pick up here on Monday, and your test will be on Friday of next week.
Thank you.